going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
But if it ends up being 1 versus 2, which seems likely because the Cavs had a 5.5-game lead over Boston, the Celtics 3 games clear of the New York Knicks.
They're not unstoppable, not running away with everything, but for them to blow a 5.5-game lead on the backstretch in the NBA, already being a quality team outside of disastrous injuries, I don't buy that at this time.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line, we welcome you to hour number 3 on this Tuesday. He is Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. One more hour to go on the SportsGrid network. We round out our offseason outlook for the 7 AFC playoff teams from a season ago by hearing from you about the Pittsburgh Steelers and the age-old question, the quarterback position in the Steel City this offseason. Then we'll talk to Keith Stewart about some notable news around the PGA Tour. A TGL triple header last night, of course, get you ready for a new week in the world of golf, and a huge Tuesday night slate in college basketball, as they often are. Fewer than 4 weeks away from Selection Sunday. John Rothstein will join the show later on in this third and final hour. DRS, a lot to get to. Can't wait for your college basketball best bet of this Tuesday as well.
Let's go. Let's have some fun, getting in the swing of things, ironing some things out. And by the way, could my best bet be a game itself, or maybe a guy lining up 3-point shots, or could it be maybe a player prop of 16.5 points? Could we be looking at like a, let's just say, a dentist as a head coach somewhere in that environment? You never know, Ben. You never know where we're going tonight. See that?
I know, but I'm not going to spoil it, I think, just based off those context clues. All right, DRS. We talked about in our second hour the offseason outlook for all of the AFC playoff teams, or at least 6 of the 7 in the entirety of that second hour. Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, Texans, 2 wild card teams out of the AFC West, the Chargers and the Broncos. But now it's time for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are the only playoff team perhaps in the entirety of the NFL, but at least in the AFC, that will have a different starting quarterback to begin 2025 than they did to start 2024, or even midway through 2024. The Vikings also in the NFC, more than likely. At least J.J. McCarthy was in-house. I'm not sure anybody's in-house right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Who is going to be the Steelers starter at the quarterback spot next season? It's a question for all of you and Fade the Public. At SportsGrid on Twitter, who will be the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback next season? Aaron Rodgers, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, or your fourth and final option, other, and if you did select other, we asked for a reply. And we got a couple of pretty good responses as well. Most of the public, though, DRS, 40.5% saying Justin Fields is going to be the Steelers' starting quarterback to begin 2025. Donnie, are you fading the public?
Yes, I am. Like, did we not watch what the Pittsburgh Steelers did last year? Did you not watch when they acquired Justin Fields? And everybody's like, ooh, that could be an interesting move, only for Mike Tomlin to call every radio station on the East Coast and say, why are you making this a big deal? Yeah, we acquired Justin Fields. He's never going to play for me, and he won't be my starter. Wait, that doesn't make sense. Oh, let's play it out how it goes in the regular season. Justin Fields takes over as the starter because Russell Wilson is injured, and Fields leads them to a winning record. And Mike Tomlin goes, yeah, we are lucky, basically, to have a winning record with this guy quarterback. He's immediately going to the bench, only to praise Russell Wilson the entire way as if he was a 7-time Super Bowl champion and can do no wrong. So now we're going into the offseason where nothing we hear from the Steelers but praise for Russell Wilson, right or wrong. But now we're led to believe that the public wants Justin Fields to be their quarterback when Mike Tomlin already told you, I can't even give this guy a 50-50 chance. I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to Russell Wilson the entire way through. I don't think there's any way, shape, or form Justin Fields is the starting quarterback for the Steelers last year, just based off what their head coach has completely told me about Justin Fields. He's not my starter.
Mike Tomlin has been pretty adamant about that in the offseason, even with Russell Wilson during training camp, dealing with a calf injury. Well, is it an open quarterback competition? Nope. Doesn't matter what they do in the preseason. It's Russell Wilson. Well, Coach, Russ is not played or practice. How do you? Nope. Still Russ if he gets back. Oh, he's not back? Justin Fields gets off to a great start for the Steelers. Russ is back? Yeah. All right. Sit your behind on the bench, Justin. This is Russ's team. And it was great to start, and it was awful to end. Yeah. A losing skid in the regular season that, of course, carried over into the playoffs. So, Donnie, that, of course, is the big picture question for the Pittsburgh Steelers. What are they going to do at the quarterback spot this offseason? Who is going to be that starting quarterback? Here is the offseason outlook for the Steelers, just to put everything in context as we did for all of the 7 playoff teams in the AFC. 10-7 record for the Steelers once again. All 18 years under Mike Tomlin, the Steelers have at least not had a losing record, have not won fewer than 8 games, and of course the RS have been a playoff team a ton in that span. But here is what I think complicates the Steelers quarterback question more than most. Neither of these guys are under contract. It's not like, well, we'll decide what we do in July with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields if we don't trade for somebody, if we don't draft somebody, if we don't sign somebody. Both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are free agents. The Steelers would have to actively choose, Donnie, to bring one of those guys back. I'm not so sure they are going to. But there was a conversation, DRS, you weren't here for on Friday. Turned out to be a lot of speculation. It was an interesting report from a known sports media person, Ryan Burr, who worked for the Golf Channel for many years, about the Jacksonville Jaguars receiving calls from the Steelers doing their due diligence about Trevor Lawrence's status. Basically, it's like if Donnie and I called the Jags and said, hey, is Trevor Lawrence a free agent? And they would have said, what are you talking about? Basically is how that came to it. Jacksonville is not trading Trevor Lawrence this offseason. But the Steelers are maybe making some calls around the NFL. But it did lead to some reporting from an actual NFL insider in Albert Breer, who was asked about the Steelers quarterback situation. And of course, Donnie, when one report comes out, other reporters want to be involved in all of the conjecture. And Breer did say that he has heard from some around the Steelers organization that within the actual building, they're not too fond of Russ. That they actually believe more in Justin Fields at this moment. Do you put any stake into that? And that Fields might return just because they like him a little bit more?
Here's again, like, you have to listen to some of the reporters who are tied in, but I just go what the Steelers have told us here. And also understand this, like Mike Tomlin, which is a shame for the Pittsburgh Steelers and their fan base. This was a team that was used to competing for Lombardies. Now their goal is actually just to be 500 or better. And if you're looking at Mike Tomlin, whose goal apparently is to be 500 or better every year, who gives you the best chance of going out and actually playing quarterback? Is it Russell Wilson, who didn't play very well last year, but at least he actually plays quarterback? Or is it Justin Fields, who's not going to throw the football and try to use his legs the entire way, and that's the best point of entry? Because the one thing the Steelers are at that crossroads. They're good enough to make the playoffs, but not good enough to win a championship. You know you can't do that unless you actually get a quarterback. How was their best, pathways to victory in the past? Drafted Terry Bradshaw, worked out pretty good in the 70s. Drafted Ben Roethlisberger, worked out pretty good in the 2000s. You're not going to win anything with Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Aaron Rodgers on your roster. Is it better to say, well, we know we can't win anything. Let's just get the best veteran in here to win 9 or 10 games and make the playoffs and then reset and wait until Mike Tomlin is either forced out or decides to leave and or retire before you tear it down? That's the issues that we're having. But for me, if you tell me right now, hey, we made our move, it's Justin Fields as our quarterback. I don't know if I'm ever in on the Steelers, but I'm completely out on the Steelers at that point.
For sure. Could that be the first losing season for Mike Tomlin, or the first season with fewer than 8 victories? Perhaps. Nobody that we listed, I think, elevates the Steelers to an actual conference contender. And that's kind of the big picture question for Pittsburgh as well. Would another 9-8 season, potentially a playoff berth, but a one and done, be enough to keep Tomlin around? This Steelers team has not played in the conference championship since 2016, has not appeared in a Super Bowl since 2010. Couple of replies, by the way, for Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
Even Matthew Stafford got his hat thrown in the ring. I guess we shall see. Keith Stewart joins the show up next.
Slow play drum beat grows louder and louder every week, to the point now that they're making overt references to it on the broadcast.
So there's plenty of other guys that have to get faster. Tom definitely is more deliberate in his conversations, always has been since he's been on tour. I just think about Joe Skovron, when those two started working together, how their conversations always seem to just keep on going and going.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
At some point, these ADs are going to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who know how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
But if it ends up being 1 versus 2, which seems likely because the Cavs had a 5.5 game lead over Boston, the Celtics 3 games clear of the New York Knicks.
They're not unstoppable, not running away with everything, but for them to blow a 5.5 game lead on the backstretch in the NBA, already being a quality team outside of disastrous injuries, I don't buy that at this time.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Patino himself, in a clip that we just played, said basically the stats are not backing up the team's wins.
St. John's is offensive glass. That's where a lot of opportunities for St. John's came from. St. John's does not shoot the basketball well. It might even be fair to say they shoot it poorly. They were 3 of 16 from deep last night. But it doesn't seem to matter to them.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
We get you set for each and every week on the PGA Tour, and plenty that is happening in the world of golf, as we are joined now on the early line on this Tuesday morning by Keith Stewart, joining us live from the Sunshine State, taking in a triple header of action in TGL yesterday, and Tiger Woods in front of the simulator tonight as well down there in Florida. Keith, thank you so much for taking the time. As always, excited to have you here. Not exactly a marquee week on the PGA Tour ahead, but it was a big one last week. We'll talk about that in just a matter of moments. But once again, thanks for taking the time.
Guys, it's great to be with you on the early line. I just have to say, yesterday, the triple header for President's Day was absolutely electric. The first match, Atlanta over LA, two very good teams, goes to overtime. The second match, the Bay Club with Ludwig Oberg over Atlanta, goes down to the last putt. And then the third match of the night, the Bay Club over Boston Common with Rory McIlroy, goes down to the last putt as well. A couple rule changes there. They're having some fun. And, boy, it was some really, really entertaining sports.
Keith, it seems as though the exciting nature, the electricity, the atmosphere for TGL has continued throughout the entirety of its season. But let's go to that PGA Tour schedule. Genesis Invitational, of course, in the other location at Torrey Pines. And he was almost forgotten on Sunday, but certainly not forgotten if you paid attention to the early line with Keith last week, live from San Diego. His early leans on the early line told you to keep an eye on Ludwig Oberg at a 25-1 number early in the week and a champion at the Genesis Invitational. Keith, what stood out to you most about Oberg's performance on Sunday to go home a champion?
Well, I tell you what, everyone knows about 3 weeks ago when he played in the Farmers. He was leading after 36 holes, and then he got sick and couldn't finish that one off. I tell you what, he had that on his mind. He was healthy, and he took down the best in the world. He was really, really impressive. Number one, tee to green, and it was an absolute stripe show. Over his last 12 holes, he shot 6 under par on Sunday, and he took control of the tournament when Scotty was a little too far back, when Rory couldn't get the job done. It was Matt McNeely, it was Patrick Rogers, it was Denny McCarthy at the top. Ludwig Oberg was 5th in the world at the time. He said, hey, you know what, boys? This is my tournament. He goes 3 birdies in a row on the back 9. I know CBS didn't cover it, but guess what? Those shots still happen. And it was absolutely fantastic. 7-foot birdie on the last to take his first signature title in front of Tiger Woods. This kid he's the it player in golf right now.
Feels like right now another day closer to the Masters, which we love, is almost that rite of spring coming up. But we got a couple more golf tournaments in here squeezed in between. One this weekend is the Mexico Open at Vedanta World. Looks like it's about 7,500 yards here. Talk to us about this golf course, and also, are we at elevation here in Mexico? Will that help the players, and who does it fit here?
Donnie, unfortunately, we're not. We're down there in the Cabo, like Puerto Vallarta area, and these guys are right there, seaside. When it comes right down to it, you guys want Keith's keys. Number one, you're going to need some ball speed at this place. You look at the guys that have won, Jake Knapp, Tony Finau, John Rahm, all of those leaderboards, they're just covered with absolute bombers. Those 3 winners themselves have gained an average of 4.5 strokes off the tee on the field. The second thing is you got to have long irons. 40% of your approach shots this week are coming in from over 200 yards. You got to have guys that can have some super proximity from far away. And the third thing is you got to watch out for these par 3s, Donnie. There's 5 of them on this golf course. So the extra par 3 thrown in there over the course of 4 days and 72 holes definitely adds up, and a bunch of them are long. So it goes back to the 200 yards plus approach factor. Those are 3 things that I keep an eye on when you're looking at either the top of the board or even a little bit further down.
The final weekend of February into March begins the Florida Swing next week. Then we get back to some of the bigger, more signature events on the PGA Tour, the Arnold Palmer Invitational, the API into the Players' Championship, golf's 5th major. But Keith, maybe this week, not exactly the most robust field of the Mexico Open. So as you look at the odds board and who you expect to have a good week in Puerto Vallarta, who are a couple of names for us to know?
I tell you what, it's not often that you're going to have Akshay Bhatia carry a tournament as the favorite. He did finish T9 at the Genesis, so he's somebody to watch out for. And we have seen the favorites win here before. Rahm did it in the first edition, and in the second edition, Tony Finau did it. I'm not quite sure, though, Akshay Bhatia has the resume quite of those two. I'm looking a little bit further down the board for my early leans. The first guy I like is Beau Hossler. Beau Hossler's the type of player that plays very well in the desert, and that's what this golf course is going to seem like. Almost like you're over in Dubai somewhere, right? It's wide open. Donnie already mentioned it. It's super, super long at 7,400 plus yards. You got to be able to bomb it. You got to be able to hit some long irons. Beau can do that, and he can get up and down. At plus 3,500, I like him in that middle tier. I mean, some of these guys are at some crazy numbers that normally are in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and they're down in the 20s and 30s. Bo, he's definitely a guy that's been out on tour, 4 made cuts this year, and he absolutely has had 2 top 15s, one of which was at Amex, which is also in the desert. The second guy, and you guys are going to love saying this name, Matteo Manassero, all right? At plus 12,000, 120 to 1. This guy's an absolute stud. We remember him as a kid coming out of Italy, made it on the DP World Tour early. Well, you know what? He is qualified for the PGA Tour this year because of his play last year over there in the Rolex standings. Matteo is absolutely a perfect fit for this place. He bombs it, and he's a really, really solid long iron player, much like Francisco Molinari, his countryman, was for so many years on the PGA Tour. Must be something in the past over there. I don't know. But Manassero is definitely somebody hard this week. And further down the list, we can make some money this week, guys, because without all of those headliners, there's definitely going to be some bombs in contention.
Some big spots and no doubt some value at the Mexico Open. Keith, tonight at TGL, Tiger Woods out there as well. What do you expect to see out of the big cat tonight in TGL?
I think the Tiger is really itching to play some golf. You could kind of sense it in the booth at CBS with Jim Nantz over the weekend. There was a lot of talk about golf, a lot of talk about being competitive. I think that he was just dying to get back out and do something. So tonight, he's jumping back in against New York. Both of these teams really need a win. They're facing elimination in the playoffs for the TGL, which will be over by the end of March. I think a big night from Tiger and an even bigger night from Tom Kim.
That's what you got to do in front of that simulator. Keith, we appreciate it. Enjoy the action tonight at TGL. Some college basketball handicaps come your way on the other side of the break on TEL.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
But if it ends up being 1 versus 2, which seems likely because the Cavs had a 5.5 game lead over Boston, the Celtics 3 games clear of the New York Knicks.
They're not unstoppable, not running away with everything, but for them to blow a 5.5 game lead on the backstretch in the NBA, already being a quality team outside of disastrous injuries, I don't buy that at this time.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? Over, you're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
This is Donnie Right Side's college basketball season. When football is fully done in late February with a couple of weeks left of regular season action in conference campaigns, that's when DRS steps up and in. Team totals, player props, he's got you covered based on the models, based on the metrics, and with some winners on this Tuesday night. And each and every Tuesday night in college basketball, really has been sensational. We expect nothing but the same on this Tuesday evening. We start in the Big Ten. We're starting today with a triple header of action in Big Ten men's basketball. There is at least one game every day through the end of the regular season, Sunday, March 9th. 21 consecutive days of Big Ten hoops, baby. And what a way to get it started. Top 15 tilt tonight in East Lansing. It is Michigan State and Purdue. Number 14, MSU. Number 13, Purdue, who dropped both of its games last week. First back-to-back losing skid for the Boilers in Big Ten play in nearly 2 years. In the Spartans, after making some history on Saturday evening in Champaign against Illinois, a 3.5-point home favorite tonight. Total at 148 and a hook. Donnie, how do you break down this Big Ten bash tonight in East Lansing?
If you came to watch the three-point shot, turn the TV off and go to sleep. That ain't happening tonight because Michigan State's defense, number one overall in efficiency in Big Ten play, going up against Purdue's number one offense in efficiency. So right away, you'd say, well, they probably use the three-point shot a lot. Not necessarily. 13th out of 18 teams at volume from three-point range, that is Purdue. But how about Michigan State's defense here, Ben? Number one in Big Ten play at defending the three-point line. But here's the caveat. Yeah. They'll let you shoot the three-point shot, but they defend it extremely well. For a team like Purdue, that doesn't necessarily want to do that. So you look at the point distribution here. Number two in Big Ten play is Purdue inside the arc. That's pretty good. But Michigan State is stingy inside the arc at also defense. As we told you, number one overall in efficiency. But here's where the game lines up pretty good here. Michigan State on offense, third in efficiency against the third most efficient defense in Purdue. So you're trying to make some of those changes. Where can we fit in? Now, the one thing that Michigan State has to try to avoid tonight, Purdue is the best team in Big Ten play at turning you over. 15th in the conference at turning the basketball over is Michigan State. You also take a look at Michigan State at the three-point line. As I told you to start, we're not getting a lot of three-point shots here. Why? 18th in conference play at volume from the three-point line. That's Michigan State. Purdue defends it pretty well. That's not where they look. Point distribution inside the arc, fourth overall here for Michigan State. But here's the caveat, too. Number two in conference play, Michigan State, at getting to the free throw line. You take a look at Purdue, 11th in fouling in conference play. Why is that important? Who's the best free throw shooting team in the Big Ten? It is Michigan State at 81% as a team. And you take a look at the point distribution. Who's number one at scoring the percentage of their points from the free throw line in Big Ten play? It's Michigan State. In a close basketball game that they are favored, they'll make their free throws. I think it's going to be a great game, a close contest. But I had to pick a side. I would lay with Michigan State in this game.
When you look at the total as well, 148 and a half, the Spartans under in 5 of 6 for all of the defensive reasons that Donnie just highlighted. Purdue over in 5 of its last 6 games. Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Renn playing at a Big Ten, all Big Ten level. And frankly, Braden Smith, the only other guy with a price. That is Purdue's point guard. He is the best in the country as a point guard. The only other guy with a price to win the Wooden Award outside of Cooper Flagg and Janai Broome. It is a critical week, DRS, for the race for the Big Ten regular season crown. Yeah. Michigan State 11-3, Purdue 11-4. Both teams looking up ever so slightly at the Maize and Blue. Michigan beat Purdue last week at home. Michigan State heads to Ann Arbor on Friday night against its bitter rival in the Wolverines. What a great one it is going to be. Top 25 tilt in the SEC. We head to Stark Vegas. Number 21, Mississippi State, playing better on Saturday than they had entering in the Egg Basket Bowl against Ole Miss. Winning on the road in Oxford. That incredibly impressive. But enter Texas A&M. 2.5-point spread, DRS, in favor of the Bulldogs at home. That total 141 and a hook. What's the play tonight between the Aggies and the Bulldogs?
Home court advantage does matter, but you take a look at Texas A&M's defense overall efficiency, number 2 in conference play. Where can you find those inefficiencies? Well, the one thing Mississippi State doesn't do as a team is shoot the three-point shot all that well, but they're third in conference play at volume. Do you know who's 16th in volume on defense, which means they will let you shoot the three-point shot? It's Texas A&M. Well, good for us for Josh Hubbard. If you look at his last couple starts at home, he reigns from three-point range. Not going to be cheap, though. To make 4 of them, it's like a plus 160 number on the FanDuel Sportsbook right now. I'm debating right now. 4 3-point shots or 16.5 points. One way or another, Josh Hubbard has to be the key tonight for Mississippi State.
Think about it over the break. More college basketball bets next.
There's going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
But if it ends up being 1 versus 2, which seems likely because the Cavs had a 5.5 game lead over Boston, the Celtics 3 games clear of the New York Knicks.
They're not unstoppable, not running away with everything, but for them to blow a 5.5 game lead on the backstretch in the NBA, already being a quality team outside of disastrous injuries, I don't buy that at this time.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? Over, you're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Continuing to break down another wonderful Tuesday evening slate in college basketball. All right, DRS. Top 25 tilt in Starkville. Number 21, Mississippi State. Number 7, Texas A&M. You have had some time to think about it. How are you approaching Josh Hubbard tonight, the point guard for Chris Jan's Bulldogs?
Hey, let's just go both. I mean, come on now. Isn't there like a correlation here? Like, it's going to splash 4 triples down, but we're not going to get over 16.5 points in this game? Nonsense. A couple free throws go through because, as we said, sometimes it doesn't line up. But if there's one game for a guy who loves to shoot 3-point shots, and he is going to be at home for this game against a team that's like, shoot as many as you want, like, hey, if he goes 1 for 9 from 3-point range, like, you know what? I had my chances at this point here. So I do think there's if they do win, I can't see him scoring 13 points in the win. You see what I mean? So I think both have to be that correlation. If they're going to play well and he loves to shoot 3-point shots against a team that will let you shoot threes, come on now. But 4. Like, they're not even giving you the 3 at FanDuel. Like, no, we're not buying that. You need 4+. And it is a good plus money number, though.
But it does make sense because Josh Hubbard in 7 consecutive games has attempted at least 8 threes.
Yes.
Now, he's not hitting at a 50% clip, but still, he's getting that volume out there. In 9 of the last 10,
good at home, too.
at least, yes, at least 8 hoisted threes out of Josh Hubbard. He is not scared to shoot. But Texas A&M, great defensively. The intensity that Buzz Williams teams have always played with is carried over here for A&M. On that 2 line, the number 6 overall seed in the early bracket preview from the selection committee on Saturday afternoon. A&M has won 5 straight. They have also gone under in 8 of their last 9 games. I told you to keep an eye on Florida. Minus 115 to be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, and now the number 2 overall team in the country. On the rise in the AP Top 25, the Gators a double-digit home favorite tonight in Gainesville against Oklahoma. A little bit of movement, though, back to OU. 13.5-point spread in favor of the Gators. Is this game, DRS, going to be competitive tonight in Gainesville?
It might be competitive, but if I'm looking at any angle, it's probably the offense for Florida here, maybe a team total. You take a look at the offense for Oklahoma. They played a decent tempo here, by the way, over the past, 4 to 5 games, giving up some decent amount of points from their defense. If you look at Florida, third most efficient team in the SEC on offense going up against Oklahoma's defense, which is 11th in efficiency. Also, one of the teams that fouls more than anybody else in SEC play, it is Oklahoma. Now, Florida doesn't really eat from the free throw line like we talk about some other teams needing that, but they love to shoot the three-point shot. Number one, 44% of the shots from the Florida Gators in conference play come from three-point range, which is great because you look at the team that's 12th in line at letting you shoot the three-point shot out of 16 in the SEC, it is Oklahoma. And also, you take a look at a team with Oklahoma's defense, don't rebound all that well, which means extra chance opportunities. Even if you took it inside the arc, 14th at defending inside the arc, that is Oklahoma. Florida should be able to do whatever they want on offense, and I look for a complete performance out of them in that way. So instead of looking at that mid-150s, let's just say for the total for the game, just look at Florida. This game ain't going over unless Florida is the team that's helping push it to the over.
Porter Moser and his Sooners, one of 4 remaining undefeated teams nearing the end of 2024's calendar year around the D1 level in college basketball. Oklahoma started perfect, 13-0, but then SEC play happened, and they are just 3-9. They have lost 4 in a row. The Gators have won 4 straight. Florida over in 3 of those 4 games. Oklahoma under far more often as an underdog in SEC play, where they have been and where they will be tonight as they head to Gainesville. All right, DRS, plenty of other great games around the country tonight. Houston continues to try to keep pace atop the Big 12. They're a double-digit road favorite in Tempe against Arizona State. If the Cougs are to falter, might Iowa State be on the rise? Big-time favorite against a bad Colorado team at home tonight in Hilton Coliseum. Houston and Iowa State Saturday in H-Town. That's going to be a really good one between those two teams. Texas Tech, keep an eye on the Red Raiders in the Big 12 title race. 7.5-point road favorite now tonight in, why am I blanking on where it is? Fort Worth to take on TCU. A couple of big games, DRS, in the Big 12.
There is. And by the way, you look at that Houston-Arizona State game. Sometimes you love the mismatches that you put together because you have a bad offensive for Arizona State going up against Houston, which we know is like being sent through the meat grinder. Look at the turnover percentage. One of the teams that turns it over the most in conference play is Arizona State. Who takes it away the most in conference play? It's Houston. How about offensive rebounding for Arizona State? Horrendous. How about a great defensive rebounding team here in Houston? And you just take a look at the stretch. Unless you're knocking down your three-point shots, which Houston will let you shoot, how are they going over their team total tonight for Arizona State? Like, I lost out yesterday by a couple points on Virginia. Like, if you're looking for a team total under, like, what does Arizona State do tonight to Houston? I don't think much. So maybe they stay under their team total tonight in that basketball game.
Houston in a great position in the Big 12 with a victory tonight on the road to win the conference crown for its second consecutive year. It's only 2 years in the league. There were some that worried, could the Cougs, who were so dominant in the American, do the same in the Big 12? The answer has, of course, been yes. With a victory tonight, Houston will be 14-1, a full 2 games in front of Arizona, who they beat in Tucson over the weekend. A couple of other big ones in the Big 10. Wisconsin, number 11 in the country, a team that I am incredibly excited by. Just a 3.5-point favorite against Illinois. The Illini trying to find it. Big East basketball. Marquette, 17.5-point favorite against a bad Seton Hall team. But that bad Seton Hall team beat UConn at home in New Jersey over the weekend. Connecticut hoping to bounce back at home against Villanova. 7.5-point spread. DRS, as you look around the country, elsewhere in college basketball tonight, what other games get your attention?
Yeah, trying to look at that Villanova-UConn game as you measure it out, because you're looking at the Big East here, which isn't great per se from top to bottom, but you look at the number 1 overall efficient team in conference play, it's Connecticut. You know who's number 2 in conference play in the Big East? It's actually Villanova. You're talking about Villanova, who's always had a penchant for shooting and making the three-point shot, shooting close to 40% as a team. 9th in conference play out of 11 at defending the three-point line, it's Connecticut. Now, the one thing that Connecticut does well, Ben, they chase you off of the three-point line. So the key for this ingredient is, can you get get to the free throw line because Villanova shoots an incredible rate here at close to 82% as a team in conference play. But can you make your three-point shots? Connecticut fouls a lot, but UConn doesn't, for Villanova doesn't necessarily get to the free throw line. But the key here also on the opposite side, Villanova is going to let you shoot the three-point shot. Connecticut likes to shoot the three-point shot. I actually think we get points tonight in Villanova, Connecticut, because that three-point line should be open. If guys are making their free throws and their three-point shots, why not tonight here? Two efficient offenses, two average defenses. Give me some points at the XL Center in Hartford.
Love that, DRS. And let's keep an eye on some points tonight inside the Kohl Center in Madison. Not your father's Wisconsin basketball team.
Yeah.
One of the best offenses we have ever seen out of Badgers basketball. In Illinois, again, they got off to a great start in Big Ten play, 4-1. They have now dropped 6 of their last 11. They have also gone over in 11 of their last 16 games. It's 160.5. It's a steep total tonight in Madison, but Wisconsin can score, Illinois can match, and the Illini will allow you to do so on the defensive side of the floor. Some really great games, DRS, with some huge implications all across college hoops. And again, we talked about the Big 12. Big one tonight in one of those handicapping spots. BYU now a 3.5-point home favorite in Provo against the Kansas team that is barely inside the top 25 after being the preseason number 1 for a second consecutive year. Last year, DRS, the Jayhawks had 8 Big 12 losses for the first time since the late 80s. They're kind of on a path to seeing that similar mark this season.
Yeah, and BYU, known of pension, again, I love it, making the three-point shot and particularly doing it at home. But the one thing we do about Kansas, number 1 at defending the three-point shot in conference play. And also understand this, point distribution, number 1 here for BYU on offense, but number 11 on defense being stingy is Kansas. If they can hold up from the three-point line, Kansas is probably going to beat BYU tonight in their own building.
It would be a big one. The Jayhawks right now 8-6 in conference play, same conference mark for Kevin Young and his Cougars. DRS. Enjoy the money line. We'll talk tomorrow. John Ross here next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass on the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes. End of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Did you know There are only 2 more Tuesdays in the month of February. Did you know we are fewer than 4 weeks away from Selection Sunday, when the field of 68 in an NCAA men's tournament bracket will be unveiled? Did you know that John Rothstein is here with us on a Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid on behalf of the FanDuel Sportsbook and, of course, doing some excellent work with CBS Sports. John, as always, we appreciate the time. Thanks for being here on the early line.
Ben, great to be with you. I don't know if my excitement level has ever been higher than it is right now because you had that incredible intro. Just 2 more Tuesdays until a month that has no peer.
I love that. I love that catchphrase indeed. And John, as we go through the end of February into early March, throughout the entirety of the remainder of this Big Ten men's basketball regular season, there will be at least one Big Ten tilt each and every night. 21 consecutive days of Big Ten men's basketball. And what a way to get it started on this Tuesday night in a top 15 tilt in East Lansing, Michigan. Inside the Breslin Center, 14th ranked Michigan State hosting number 13 Purdue. John, 3.5-point spread in favor of the Spartans. Over-under stands at 148.5. This game is critical for the Big Ten title race. What do you expect tonight in East Lansing?
Well, I'm curious the emotion of both teams, Ben, as they're both coming off emotional situations over the weekend. Purdue was not vintage Purdue defensively on Saturday against Wisconsin, giving up 94 points to the Badgers at Mackey Arena. And then conversely, Michigan State is coming off that road win at Illinois, which was Tom Izzo's, defining win in terms of passing Bob Knight's record for the most, wins all time by a Big Ten head coach. So I expect a typical Michigan State-Purdue game. I'm really curious, though, how Michigan State's depth affects the Boilers. I think Michigan State's the deeper team, but Purdue has more star power, obviously, with Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn.
It has been the mentality for MSU all year, John. They wear it on their pregame warm-ups. Strength in numbers. We'll see if that continues tonight. It was Big Ten win number 354 on Saturday for Tom Izzo. Now the all-time winningest head coach in Big Ten history. One past Bob Knight. But Michigan State still in the hunt for a Big Ten regular season championship, as is Purdue, but Michigan at the top. John, how about this for a week in the Big Ten? This game tonight between MSU and Purdue. The Spartans 11-3, the Boilers 11-4 in Big Ten play. And then Friday night in Ann Arbor, it's Michigan at 12-2, hosting their in-state rivals in Michigan State. When all is said and done, at the end of this regular season, John, who wins a Big Ten regular season crown?
I think it's Michigan, and I think we can start to say right now that when you look at the makeup of this conference, if we're looking at a Big Ten Coach of the Year race, I think I would say Dusty May 1, Greg Gard number 2, and you look at the two dynamics in which those head coaches took over. Dusty May takes the Michigan job off a team that wins 8 games under Juwan Howard, builds a completely different roster, and now has Michigan in position to be in position to win a Big Ten regular season title. What about Greg Gard, meanwhile, whose team will host Illinois tonight in Madison? Greg Gard loses Chucky Hepburn to Louisville, loses A.J. Storr to Kansas. And remember, that was a Wisconsin team that was a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament, and the Badgers are significantly better. So those two coaches, to me, at the top of the Big Ten Coach of the Year race, Kevin Willard from Maryland, Mick Cronin of UCLA not far behind.
John, as you well know, not your father's Badgers offense this year for how prolific Wisconsin has been. 3.5-point spread in favor of the Badgers as they host a reeling Illini team inside the Kohl Center tonight. Let's get to the SEC. Top 25 tilt in Starkville. Number 21, Mississippi State, after a big rivalry road win over the weekend in Oxford, now gets ready to take on number 7, Texas A&M. The Bulldogs, an ever so slight 2.5-point favorite at home. John, A&M has won 5 straight games. How do you break down this matchup in the SEC tonight?
The mark of a team that's built to go deep in the NCAA tournament, the mark of a team that obviously is built for March, is how it plays away from home. Texas A&M entering tonight's game against Mississippi State in Starkville is 4-3 in true road games this season. And Ben, 2 of those 3 losses at UCF and then also at Texas were by a combined 4 points. And that 4-3 record does not count the game that Texas A&M won against Purdue at Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis in December, which is an hour away from the Boilers campus. So if you count that as well as a road game, A&M is 5-3, and that's why when you consider what this team returned, over 82% of its scoring from last year's team that took Houston to the wire in the second round of the NCAA tournament and lost in overtime, and what it added in the transfer portal with Zurich Phelps, with Pharrell Payne, with C.J. Wilcher, I think you can say right now that unequivocally this is Buzz Williams' best chance to go to a Final Four.
I think you could say there is palpable buzz in College Station without little doubt. John, as we focus on the SEC, the early bracket preview on Saturday, we learned that Florida would be on the one line if the season ended when it did, and the committee thinks very highly of the Gators. How could you not? Florida now the number 2 team in the AP Top 25 this week. 13.5-point favorite now at home tonight in Gainesville as Todd Golden's Gators get ready to host Oklahoma. John, this game we can break down for sure. But when you look at this Florida team and what we will see tonight, what is the ceiling for UF this year?
You know, Florida is unequivocally a Final Four caliber team. Walter Clayton Jr. is playing like a first-team All-American. And, Ben, we have to remember this, and we have to continue to reiterate it as we continue to talk about college basketball. One of the biggest reasons why Florida has been so effective this year is because of the retention that this program has had. And I talked about this with Todd Golden yesterday on my podcast. You know, it was such a big priority for Florida to retain before it started adding. It allowed the Gators to have the foundation that they have right now. Walter Clayton Jr., Denzel Aberdeen, you know, Will Richard, Alex Condon, Tommy Houck, all of these players were a part of last year's team that made the NCAA tournament and lost to Colorado in the first round.
This is only February, but just 2 more Tuesdays in this month before one you know very well. John Rothstein, as always, we appreciate the time. More on the early line up next.
Slow play drumbeat grows louder and louder every week to the point now that they're making overt references to it on the broadcast.
So there's plenty of other guys that have to get faster. Tom definitely is more deliberate in his conversations, always has been since he's been on tour. I just think about Joe Scoverin, when those two started working together, how their conversations always seem to just keep on going and going.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
At some point, these ADs are going to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who know how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams. Who's got the best goaltending? Over, you're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
20-34. They are 14 games below 500. Any given night, you have no idea who is going to play for Philadelphia. Embiid has missed so many more games than he has actually played this year.
I will not bet on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I will not bet on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I will not bet on the Ravens because for the last 4 years now, I do it every year, and I want to hit myself in the head with a bat.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
is only February, but we near March in not just men's college basketball, but of course on the women's side. So let's get you caught up to speed in everything that we have seen, much like the early bracket preview on Saturday afternoon for the men's big dance. Same story for the women's NCAA tournament. Here were the 4 number 1 seeds in that early bracket preview. None should be overly shocking. UCLA, South Carolina, Texas, and Notre Dame. But that came out on Sunday afternoon ahead of a huge game for South Carolina at home hosting UConn. The Gamecocks got beat bad by 29, matching their third largest home defeat in nearly 25 years and ending South Carolina's 71-game home win streak. I still think South Carolina's probably on the one line when all is said and done, still with a couple of weeks remaining in the regular season in conference tournament action, the opening full week in March to determine everything, seed lines and spots in the NCAA tournament. But now let's go to the odds perspective. We start with the national championship prices. South Carolina remains that favorite at plus 290. But UConn, who just won by 29 in Columbia, led by AZ Fudd in a 28-point performance, not all that far behind for Gino Auriemma and his Connecticut Huskies team, plus 330 on UConn. UCLA last week, first loss of the season, with a historic and generational performance from Juju Watkins in a home game for USC against the Bruins. First loss of the year for UCLA after 23 straight wins. The Bruins are going to be fine, and they have one of the best bigs in the sport in Lauren Betts. I already bet UCLA about a month ago at 5-1 to win the title. That number now down by $1. Earlier today, I bet Texas at a 5-1 price to win the national championship for reasons I will tell you in just a moment, but Notre Dame at 5-1 as well. And I just want to take a moment. Oftentimes, we have seen dominance in women's college basketball. UConn for the better part of the early aughts and into the 2010s. South Carolina here as of late. You'll have a very short favorite in comparison to the rest of the field. You see right there, 5 teams separated by just over $2, all at a 5-1 price or better. That is awesome. Awesome for women's college basketball as we get ready for March. In Notre Dame, the top team in the country, double-digit home win last night in a top 15 tilt against Duke, and Hannah Hidalgo, one of the best guards in the country as well. On the right side of that page, Notre Dame's point guard has the second best price to win the Wooden Award, Juju Watkins, after that generational performance in the rivalry game against number 1 UCLA. To hand the Bruins their only loss of the year is now the Wooden Award favorite at minus 145. Anissa Morrow has been incredible for LSU. Paige Beckers, great this year for UConn as well. Lauren Betts, as I said, for the Bruins, one of the best bigs in the country. And if I may, just take a moment to highlight even more individual performance before I get to my reasons why I bet the Longhorns at a 5-1 price to win the national championship. We didn't get into this yesterday. Our apologies. Michaela Blakes, the freshman for Vandy, setting a D1 women's basketball record on Sunday afternoon, scoring 55 points in an overtime thriller for Vanderbilt on the road against Auburn. Again, the D1 women's record for the most points scored in a single game by a freshman, moving past an all-time great in Elena Delle Donne. She also, Michaela Blakes, scored 53 points against Florida just 2.5 weeks ago. So to set the D1 record is insane. To do it with 55 points is ridiculous. To score 30 points in the final 6 minutes of regulation and in OT to lead her team in Vandy to a 13-point comeback when they were down by that many with 6 minutes remaining in regulation is insane. To also score 53 about 2.5 weeks prior, words really just cannot describe. Now to Texas. The reason I bet Texas at 5-1 is because the Longhorns right now are making history, capped off by a victory against LSU at home on Sunday afternoon. Texas is the first team in women's college basketball in 2 decades, since the 2004-05 season, to beat 3 top 10 opponents in a row, which started with handing South Carolina its first loss in more than 55 consecutive SEC games. Then they went on the road and beat Kentucky, no drop-off for UT. Then at home, beat LSU on Sunday. Texas is a big game hunter, and that 5-1 price, I think the Longhorns will be a Final Four team this year in the NCAA Women's Basketball Tournament. The early line turns tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern on a Wednesday.